How did the United States stand today as the most powerful nation in human history? Without a doubt, America has successfully positioned itself as the superpower of superpowers. With around 750 overseas military bases in at least 80 countries, nearly 243,000 service members stationed abroad, and budgeted military spending that dwarfs the globe, close to 40% of all global defense outlays, America projects an unmatched global reach. It spends more on defense than the next 9 largest countries combined. But this isn't just brute force, it's economic might, because the US dollar still makes up nearly 60% of global reserves. Its cultural dominance through Hollywood, Silicon Valley, and global media, and its institutional leadership at the United Nations, NATO, the IMF, the World Bank, and beyond. But this dominance didn't come overnight. Welcome back to Facts on Trial. Today, we are diving into how America became this powerful in the first place. Let us go back to the days of old. It begins with early settlers, Puritans, Dutch merchants, German farmers, Europeans who believed they were divinely chosen. They brought religion, commerce, and a supremacist belief that their way of life was destined to prevail. That belief evolved into a doctrine called manifest destiny, coined in 1845, the conviction that the U.S. was destined to rule from the Atlantic to the Pacific. That belief justified the Louisiana Purchase, the violent removal of native nations, and the Mexican-American War, where the U.S. annexed what is now California, Texas, Arizona, Nevada, and more, half of Mexico. President James K. Polk called it expansion, but it was empire. Then came the Industrial Revolution. Railroads, steel, oil, banking. A new generation of capitalists emerged. Andrew Carnegie built the steel empire. John D. Rockefeller dominated oil. J.P. Morgan controlled finance. Cornelius Vanderbilt connected the coasts. These were self-made oligarchs whose wealth built universities, shaped public policy, and in some cases owned the government itself. With growing industrial strength came expansionism. William Seward bought Alaska in 1867 for just 2 cents an acre. Critics mocked him until they struck gold. He wanted Greenland, Iceland, and Caribbean territories too. But not everyone agreed. Many Americans were fiercely anti-imperialist. They didn't want foreign entanglements or to integrate people they considered racially inferior. That resistance slowed expansion, temporarily, but by the late 1800s, the tide changed. President McKinley, a devout expansionist, dragged the country into war with Spain in 1898. Under the rallying cry, "Remember the Maine," America declared war, seizing Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. It then annexed Hawaii, Wake Island, and American Samoa. The United States had become a global empire. In the Philippines, the U.S. crushed independence fighters who thought they were getting liberation, not occupation. In Hawaii, a queen was overthrown. In Latin America, Marines were sent to Panama, Nicaragua, and the Dominican Republic. Then came World War I. American intervention turned the tide of the war. President Woodrow Wilson sat at the Paris Peace Conference, determined to shape the future. He pushed the League of Nations, a bold international body aimed at preserving peace. But Congress said no. The U.S. had entered global politics and then backed away. The 1930s brought the Great Depression and the rise of fascism. America looked inward. But the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941 forced its hand. World War II changed everything. By 1945, America stood alone as the only major power with its economy intact. Its factories had produced hundreds of thousands of tanks and planes. It possessed the atomic bomb, and it set the terms of the New World Order. It created the United Nations to prevent another world war. It built the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund to rebuild global finance. It led the drafting of new trade rules, new alliances, and global systems. But the world didn't just roll over. The Soviet Union, a rising communist power, stood in defiance. A new Cold War began. America responded with the Truman Doctrine, the Marshall Plan, and NATO, pouring billions into Europe to stop communism from spreading. Then came the strategy of containment. America backed coups in Iran and Guatemala. It propped up brutal anti-communist dictators. It trained paramilitaries. It armed the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. It gave billions to regimes in South Korea, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Chile, and more. This wasn't just military, it was psychological, economic, cultural. The Cold War wasn't fought in trenches, it was fought in currencies, elections, and television screens. Even after the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, America didn't retreat. It expanded NATO into Eastern Europe. It led the Gulf War in 1991. It pushed China into the global economy. Under Bill Clinton, the US doubled down on global leadership. And then September 11th changed everything again. In response, the US invaded Afghanistan, then Iraq. It built drone programs, surveillance networks, cyber weapons. Homeland Security became a new super agency. The war on terror replaced the Cold War as America's global justification. Meanwhile, the US economy stayed dominant. The dollar became the backbone of global trade. American tech companies, Apple, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, became more powerful than many nations. US universities attracted the world's brightest minds. English became the global language of business and diplomacy. But behind all of this was a military-industrial complex that never stopped growing. 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers roam the oceans. Satellite systems monitor the globe. The CIA operates in over 100 countries. US troops are stationed from the Arctic to the Horn of Africa. And culturally, America exports more than movies. It exports ideology, individualism, consumerism, entrepreneurial spirit, the American dream, marketed worldwide. Still, all empires face questions. Can America sustain this forever? Rival powers are rising. China is dominating manufacturing. Russia is flexing its muscles in cyberspace. The BRICS nations are exploring new financial systems. Inside the US, debates rage over inequality, overreach, and military spending. Isolationist voices are rising again. And yet, no nation matches America's mix of hard power, soft power, innovation, influence, and global entrenchment. It is the richest, most connected, most militarily advanced, most culturally dominant country in human history. That is not just luck. That is hundreds of years of ideology, war, wealth, belief, and brutality converging. The United States did not simply rise, it was built, piece by piece, industry by industry, war by war, century by century. And that's why today, the United States remains the most powerful country on Earth. This is Facts on Trial, uncovering truths history tried to bury.